I pulled into my driveway and saw HOA contractors tearing down my private canal sign while another crew was pouring the foundation for a waterfront promenade on my land. Not near my property, on it. A banner was already stretched between two posts: Hale Riverwalk, Community Waterfront Promenade. Vanessa Hale, the HOA president, stood by the canal with a clipboard like she owned every drop of water moving through it. "Caleb," she said, calm as could be, "this bank is common area waterfront now." I looked past her at the excavator cutting into the slope beside my old gatehouse. "That canal crosses my property," I said. "You don't have permission to build here." She smiled. "The HOA has approved improvements for residents. You'll need to remove your shed and stop interfering." Behind her, workers kept going. Pavers, lighting posts, boat launch forms. The whole thing was already underway. That's when I realized she didn't just think she controlled the bank. She thought she controlled the canal. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just looked at the diversion gate sitting 20 yards behind her, the one registered under my water rights license. Vanessa thought she had built a $3 million promenade on free waterfront. She had no idea the water only moved because I let it. My grandfather helped build that canal when this county was still farms, orchards, and dirt roads. He maintained the diversion gate for decades, and when the land passed through my family, the easement and water rights stayed with it. By the time I inherited the property, I wasn't just getting an old brick house and a strip of canal bank. I was inheriting responsibility. That part mattered to me. My late wife, Ellen, understood it better than anyone. Before she passed, she helped me restore the gatehouse. She painted the trim blue, planted native grass along the bank, and told me the canal sounded like old work still doing its job. After she was gone, I kept everything maintained, mostly because it felt like keeping one piece of her steady. Then the subdivision came in across the road. At first, the HOA marketed the neighborhood as canal-side living, then waterfront lifestyle. Then Vanessa Hale became board president, and suddenly every newsletter showed walking paths, benches, kayak racks, and lights along a canal bank nobody in that HOA owned. Her husband, Richard, was always nearby, too. He wasn't on the board, but he worked as a county zoning consultant, and people treated his opinion like it carried official weight. At meetings, Vanessa would say, "Richard has looked at this," and everyone would relax, like that settled it. The first real warning came months before construction. The HOA sent a notice claiming my equipment shed violated common waterfront appearance standards. I laughed when I read it because my shed had been there longer than half their houses. But then another notice came, this one saying the canal bank was subject to shared community access. That phrase bothered me. I sent copies of my deed, the canal easement, and the water rights registration. No answer. Instead, a certified packet showed up with a map I had never seen before. It shaded my canal bank in pale blue and labeled it Public Access Easement. I stared at that map for a long time, wondering if I had missed something. Maybe some old county filing, maybe some easement my father never mentioned. For one bad hour, I actually doubted myself. Then I pulled out the original records. The blue line on their map didn't match. And if Vanessa was already using that fake-looking map to justify construction, then tearing down my sign was just the first move. The next morning, crews were back with landscaping trucks, a skid steer, and stakes running along the water. I walked down recording on my phone, trying not to let my hands shake. "You're on private land," I told the foreman. He didn't even stop working. "We're under HOA authorization." "Show me." "You'll have to talk to Mrs. Hale." Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later in a golf cart. Richard was with her, sitting beside her with sunglasses on, saying nothing. That silence bothered me more than if he'd argued. I pointed to the stakes. "You're building inside my easement corridor." Richard finally spoke. "The county accepted the current access map." "The county accepted what you submitted," I said. Vanessa cut in. "Caleb, this project is funded, approved, and underway. Residents paid for waterfront access." "They paid for marketing," I said, "not my property." Her smile disappeared for half a second. By Friday, they had installed the first sign, Hale River Walk. Seeing her name on my canal bank hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to rip it out right there. Instead, I took photos. Then they towed my maintenance trailer. That trailer held spare gate parts, old fittings, tools, and inspection gear. It had sat beside my shed for years. The notice on my door said it had been removed as an unauthorized obstruction in a common waterfront zone. I called Vanessa. "You had my trailer towed." "The HOA removed an obstruction. It's canal maintenance equipment." "Then you should have stored it somewhere appropriate." "It was on my land." "That's your interpretation," she said. That was the moment I stopped trying to convince her and started building a file. I photographed everything: trucks, permits, signs, license plates, concrete forms, every violation letter, every worker crossing the line. And the pressure wasn't only on me. 2 longtime residents downstream got notices too, one for a small dock ladder, another for a pump enclosure near an old access path. Both had been there for years. Vanessa's board called them inconsistent with waterfront redevelopment standards. That phrase kept coming up. Redevelopment. Not maintenance, not access. Redevelopment. So I contacted the State Water Authority and requested the permit records. The files showed the HOA's construction application relied on an easement map that didn't match the original canal documents. The maintenance corridor had been narrowed. The protected gate area had been softened. Operational access had been dressed up as recreation space. At first, I wasn't sure it would be enough. Paperwork can be messy. Old water records can be confusing. I worried some official would shrug and call it a civil dispute. Then I noticed Richard's name on the zoning review, fast approval, minimal notes, no serious questions about the gatehouse. My attorney also found that the main contractor, Northline Civic Works, had ties to a consulting entity connected to Richard's old business address. It wasn't proof yet, but it was enough to make me feel sick. A state engineer came out the following week. I didn't know if he would help me or bury me. He was polite, quiet, and impossible to read. He walked the canal bank, checked the excavation, crouched near the concrete wing wall, and stared at the new boat launch forms for so long I started thinking maybe he saw no issue at all. Finally, he stood up and said, "This load should not be this close to the diversion structure." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. He kept writing. "If this continues, water flow may need to be reduced to protect the structure." Before leaving, he handed me a preliminary notice explaining that emergency operational control could be authorized if conditions worsened. I sat in my truck after he left, staring at that paper. For the first time, Vanessa's shiny promenade had a weakness. The promenade opened on a Saturday. Vanessa made sure it looked like a victory parade. Balloons at the entrance, white folding chairs, a local lifestyle reporter, kids with lemonade cups walking across fresh pavers, residents taking photos in front of the new sign like it was a resort. Hale Riverwalk Waterfront Promenade. I stood across the canal near the gatehouse and watched strangers celebrate on land my wife had helped restore. That part hurt more than the legal threats, because they looked happy. Kids leaned over the railing, pointing at the water. Couples posed by the benches. A realtor posted that the neighborhood was now the county's premier waterfront community. By Monday, listings in the subdivision had already bumped up in price. To everyone else, Vanessa had won, and I looked like the bitter guy ruining the fun. One neighbor saw me by the gatehouse and said, "Caleb, maybe just let people enjoy it." I wanted to snap. I wanted to ask if he'd say that if someone built a boardwalk through his family cemetery. But I didn't. I just nodded and walked away because I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth. That night I sat in Ellen's chair by the window. For the first time I wondered if fighting it was selfish. Maybe I could settle. Maybe I could let them keep their fake riverwalk and move on. Maybe preserving every inch wasn't worth becoming the villain of the neighborhood. Then my phone rang after midnight. It was the Water Authority investigator. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "we found something in the permit file." I sat up. The easement map submitted for the promenade appeared to have been altered. And just like that, the pretty little riverwalk started cracking underneath them. My attorney had already been sending records to state officials for weeks, so by the time the altered map surfaced, the file wasn't starting from zero. Investigators had been reviewing procurement records quietly, comparing permits, invoices, and contractor relationships. That made the next discoveries hit harder. The altered map didn't just make a small mistake, it changed the story of the canal. It turned a protected working corridor into a recreational strip. It made my gatehouse look like a nearby structure instead of the control point for the whole system. Then the money trail started looking uglier. Northline Civic Works had routed part of the promenade work through a subcontractor. That subcontractor paid consulting fees to another entity connected to Richard's old network. It was layered but not clean. When Vanessa realized I wasn't going away, she got nasty. She filed a harassment complaint claiming I was intimidating contractors. Neighborhood social pages started calling me anti-community. Someone keyed my truck outside the grocery store. Then an anonymous note showed up in my mailbox. "Drop it before you lose more than a canal." I hated admitting it, but that one shook me. I checked my locks twice that night, then a third time. I stood in the dark by Ellen's blue-trimmed gatehouse, angry at myself for being scared and even angrier that these people had brought fear onto my own property. Then Richard called. "Caleb," he said, voice smooth as glass, "you've made this bigger than it needed to be." "You mean I found the maps?" "Careful with accusations. Careful with my water rights." He paused. "Old licenses can be challenged." There it was. They didn't just want the bank. They wanted leverage over the water. And while Vanessa was preparing her biggest public celebration yet, my attorney called with an update. Federal investigators had requested additional records and were coordinating with state officials. He told me not to expect anything dramatic. "They move when they're ready," he said. But Vanessa handed them the perfect stage. The HOA announced a Founders Festival on the Promenade. Food trucks, live music, kayak demos, media coverage, a big public celebration of the canal they claimed to control. 2 nights before the festival, the state engineer returned with updated findings. The construction load and altered bank conditions created enough risk to authorize an emergency flow reduction. The Water Authority confirmed it in writing. I did not have permission to punish Vanessa. I had authority to protect the diversion structure. That difference mattered. At 2:15 in the morning, I walked into the old gatehouse, unfolded the state authorization on the workbench, and turned the wheel my grandfather had once turned, slowly, carefully. By sunrise, the canal level had dropped hard. The boat launch area was the first thing exposed. The water pulled back and left a slick shelf of mud where Vanessa had promised kayak access. Then the lowered flow revealed uneven supports, rushed footings, and sections of the promenade that didn't sit right against the canal wall. By the time the Founders Festival started, Hale Riverwalk looked like a luxury boardwalk stranded over a ditch. People arrived in sunglasses and summer shirts expecting waterfront photos. Instead, they found tilted docks, orange cones, mud flats, and a launch ramp that didn't touch water. Vanessa came at me in front of everyone. "What did you do?" "I reduced flow under emergency authority." "You sabotaged a community event." "No," I said, holding up the documents. "I protected the diversion structure your construction compromised." Residents gathered. Someone asked, "Wait, he controls the water." I handed copies to the closest homeowner. The state engineer inspected it twice. The Water Authority approved emergency operational control. The HOA built inside a protected corridor using altered maps. Vanessa tried to talk over me, but the crowd wasn't listening the same way anymore. Then the first consequence hit. The county inspector, who had arrived expecting a routine event check, ordered the boat launch area closed on the spot because the lowered water exposed structural problems. Vanessa's face went pale. 20 minutes later, the second consequence arrived. 2 black SUVs pulled in near the entrance. Federal investigators stepped out and went straight to the management tent. They didn't shout. They didn't make it theatrical. They showed paperwork, separated contractor staff from board members, and began collecting project binders and computers. That quietness made it worse. Richard kept saying, "This is a misunderstanding," but nobody was looking at him like a consultant anymore. Then residents saw the third consequence unfold in pieces. Investigators asked about Northline Civic Works, then the subcontractor, then the shell company payments, then the altered easement maps, then the zoning review that had moved too quickly under Richard's name. It didn't all explode at once. It clicked into place one document at a time. The same people who had come for live music and kayak demos were now standing beside a mud-stranded promenade, watching the project's foundation collapse in public. And Vanessa, who had told me residents deserved access to what they paid for, had to stand there while everyone realized they might have paid $3 million for fraud. The canal stayed low while engineers completed inspections, then gradually returned to normal flow under state supervision. By then, the promenade was done as Vanessa knew it. The boat launch area failed inspection. Sections near the gatehouse had to be removed. The lighting and railings closest to the protected corridor were shut down. The HOA's insurance carrier disputed coverage, arguing the board had relied on flawed permits and undisclosed risk. The contractor blamed the maps. The county blamed incomplete submissions. The board blamed everybody but itself. Vanessa resigned before the next packed meeting. Richard lost consulting contracts and later faced fraud-related charges tied to the approvals and payments. Vanessa was also named in the investigation. I didn't celebrate. I was too tired for that. The harder part was facing the residents after the anger wore off. Some apologized, some avoided me. A few admitted they thought I was just an old guy clinging to a strip of land while everyone else tried to improve the neighborhood. One woman told me, "We trusted her." I said, "Yeah, I wanted to trust the process too." The final settlement kept limited resident access under strict rules, but the original water rights and easement boundaries were recognized. The HOA paid toward restoration, removal, legal costs, and monitoring. The illegal structures near the gatehouse came out. It wasn't perfect justice. Some damage stayed, some friendships never recovered. My canal bank looked scarred for months, but the water kept moving. The gatehouse stayed. And the land Ellen helped restore was no longer hidden under Vanessa Hale's name. After everything, I could have locked the canal down completely. Part of me wanted to. No benches, no access, no second chances. Just new signs, higher fencing, and a permanent reminder that greed had consequences. But that wasn't what my grandfather built, and it wasn't what Ellen would have wanted. So I created a conservation trust for the canal corridor. No private takeover, no commercial development, no construction near the gatehouse without state review and water rights approval. Residents could use designated areas, volunteer for restoration, and help protect the wetlands, but nobody could pretend they owned the system. The first volunteer day surprised me. Families showed up with gloves, trash bags, and native plants. Kids helped replant the bank where the promenade had been removed. I stood beside the blue-trimmed gatehouse and listened to the canal move like it always had. I didn't lower the water for revenge. I lowered it because someone put greed where responsibility belonged. Have you ever seen an HOA assume it owned something it never legally controlled? And if you were in my place, would you have opened the gate?